Good morning and welcome back to Trial Watch with Demetra. I am Demetra Lit all day, otherwise known as Judge D Lit. Welcome to one of the newest and fastest growing Trial Watch chats here on LawTube, YouTube. I want to thank you in advance for giving us a shout over here. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you can get aware of all the notifications. And if you catch this on a replay, please do leave me a comment, say hi, let me know you came through. Hey, Tanya McNeil. Happy Monday. Hey, Winter. The Honorable Bailiff Winter. If she put her eyeballs on you, you may be doing something you shouldn't be doing. So I hope you guys had a great weekend, I should say. Court is now back in session as we continue on with the Ponzi scheme wife trial that's based out of West Virginia. This is the trial, in case you do not know, just a quick recap of what's going on. 2019. You see here to the left, Miss Natalie Cochran, Mrs. Natalie Cochran. To the right is her husband, the now deceased, unalived victim. In this case, Michael Cochran, been married for over 18 years, 2 children between them. She a pharmacist. He worked in IT. But they both left those occupations to run to start their own government contract fulfillment company. They had many people to invest in that company, family, friends, co-workers, strangers. Turned a very good profit, began to live a very affluent life. At one point at a time or other, the other shoe dropped. Some of the investors began questioning why not getting the returns, questioning the authenticity of the investment business. When these suspicions started to arise, Michael Cochran, the state of West Virginia, alleges that Michael Cochran began to become concerned, began investigating, because Natalie Cochran, lo and behold, had been running a Ponzi scheme. The state alleges that Michael had nothing to do with that part of the business. He was not aware of the Ponzi scheme. And when he started researching into things, Natalie Cochran became fearful of being found out. And that is what the state is alleging is the motive for her having injected Michael Cochran, seemingly a healthy young man at 38 years old. The state alleges that Natalie injected him with insulin. Didn't seek out proper medical attention for him. And by the time he made it to the hospital, it already had a fatal effect and he did not survive. Now, as far as the Ponzi scheme itself, Natalie Cochran was convicted in federal court, sentenced to 11 years of federal prison. So that matter has been taken care of. And now they are in court, and she is facing the rest of her life in prison if found guilty of the unaliving of her husband, Michael Cochran. So far, let me say good morning, Diamond Forever. Good morning, VA Sage. Good to see you all back on this Monday. So far as the court theatrics go, it's been a general consensus here in the Lit Lane Jury Box. Our chat is called the Lit Lane Jury Box. Once you drop down and say hello, you have become a juror. Anywho, based on the courtroom theatrics, the Lit Lane Jury Box is of a general consensus that the state is doing somewhat of a lackluster job in performance. The defense in this case has been very vigorous, very, very vigorous. Okay, and they've done a great job so far in really, even when it wasn't their turn to put on the case, they was putting on their case the whole entire time while the state had the mic. So today is the first day that we're actually in real time with these court proceedings. They're on this. What we will be watching today and viewing is actually the court happenings that's going on now. We are. They started at 8. We're starting at 10, so we can use the magic of fast forwarding here in the watch trial with Demetra. We are a bunch of we're a mixed bunch, quite outspoken, quite opinionated, a little bit impatient, very boisterous, intelligent, and unapologetic. That's the other descriptive I could not remember the other day. Good morning, Candy Cane. Welcome back to the Little Thing Jury Box. So, without further delay, we are on part, I think I put part 8 in the title, but this is actually part 7. If you miss any parts of the trial watch, absolutely go check out the playlist. It's titled The Ponzi Scheme Wife Trial. It's a playlist, and also be on the lookout for the uploads of some highlight testimonies under the video portion of the channel. Good morning, Jill's Comfort Zone. Welcome back. All right, please hit the like, you guys. Please hit the like, and we are going to get into this. I'll probably be helping some of you guys get through your work day because we're going to be here through the duration of today's proceedings. Let's get ready to start. Let's see. All right, please hit the like.
We somehow need to get word to him to pick up the phone.
First witness today for the defense. First witness of the day for the defense. It seems like it's going to be a video conference call. Hey, Mitra, good morning. Great, Jill. Thank you. Welcome to the Little Lane Jury Box, Mitra, for real. Glad to see you.
I'm not sure that he can see us. Maybe he can.
Good morning, sweet merciful day. Welcome back to Little Lane Jury Box. Yes, ma'am. So apparently they can see the person on the screen. They're not answering the phone part.
Okay.
While they're getting that together, don't forget, in case you missed it last Friday, we actually heard testimony from the defendant's son, which was excellent. I need to upload that today. And we also heard testimony on part 7 on the playlist from her daughter. So if you missed that, please go check that out. You don't want, that's really good. Thank you, Mitri. I appreciate that. We start our first gavel to gavel trial February 3rd, next Tuesday. Mitri, please come join us because it's going to be a really intense trial.
Can you call
That's
again,
next
Colleen?
Tuesday. The state of Florida versus Tyshell Martin. You may recall while they're getting this together, that trial starts next Tuesday. Okay, it's going to be our first big live real-time gavel to gavel trial. Tyshell, the state of Florida versus Tyshell Martin. She's accused of unaliving her boyfriend's daughter, 9-year-old Jamaria Sessions, by pit bull attack. Once they investigated the death after the pit bull attack, Jamaria Sessions, again 9 years old, it was discovered long-term abuse. Okay, so we're going to be watching that. It should be very it's going to be intense. That starts next Tuesday, and we will be going gavel to gavel. I'm excited about our first real-time trial watch. Big time trial watch. Welcome back to the Little Lane Jury Box, Living. Oh, yes, ma'am, meet you for reals. And before the trial starts, we're going to do a what we know so far.
Yes, we can hear perfectly well. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir.
All right.
I've been waiting to know more about this project. It's a mess, Meecher.
It's a small matter we need to approach the bench on before we take Dr. Gregory.
All right.
Okay, so while they doing all of that, I'll go ahead in case you hadn't seen any parts of it. This trial. The defendant, Natalie, by profession, was a pharmacist. And what we heard testimony about from one of the neighbors, the very first day, her neighbor and a friend, she borrowed a bottle of insulin. Lo and behold, this very same day, Michael, the husband, 38 years old, supposed to be healthy, questionably, collapsed on the floor in the kitchen. She didn't call 911. She didn't take him to the hospital. She let him sit on the couch, lay on the couch for hours as he deteriorated and take him to the hospital. They say this was because he was going to turn her in.
Members of the jury.
For running a PONZI scheme on a business they owned.
Chief, and I'd ask Mr. Selden to call the next witness.
Your Honor, I would like to call Dr. Dragovich, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce his first name. I will let him do that.
All right, doctor, would you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. You may be seated, sir.
Thank you.
You may proceed, Mr. Selden.
Thank you. Would you please state for the court your full name and how you spell it?
I am Ljubiša Jovan Dragović. That's Ljubisa, middle Jovan, last Dragovic.
Where do you work, Dr. Dragovich, and what's your title?
I work in the capacity of Chief Forensic Pathologist and Chief Medical Examiner for County of Oakland in Michigan. And I work here in this building. This is my building, building 28 feet in Oakland County Government Complex. And this is one of our conference rooms for this purpose and other purposes, meetings and or whatever other needs.
Now, from your testimony, you're a doctor. What areas are you designated as a doctor? And by that question, do you have the title of a neuropathologist?
Oh, yes. Well, I'm a physician, MD. I graduated back 49 and a half years ago at Medical Faculty, University of Belgrade. And I went through multiple training as far as pathology. I'm trained in anatomical pathology, board certified by the American Board of Pathology. I'm board certified in neuropathology by the American Board of Pathology, and board certified in forensic pathology by the American Board of Pathology. Those occurred back in 1982, 1985, and 1987, respectively.
Are you licensed to practice in any states?
Yes, sir. I'm licensed to practice in the state of Michigan, and I'm licensed in the state of New York, where I originally obtained my license back in, I believe, 1982.
I believe you said you were board certified, and once again, for clarity, what areas are you board certified in?
I'm board certified in anatomical pathology, in neuropathology, and in forensic pathology.
Thank you. Do you have any publications, or have you authored any publications of any kind related to your field?
Yes, in both fields, both neuropathology and forensic pathology. I've done some original research papers with some of my associates over time, and I have also authored researching the areas of the neuropathology of trauma in infants and children, and in the textbook of essential forensic neuropathology. Also, I have authored the chapter in sharp force injury and separate chapter in blunt force injury in an international textbook of forensic pathology.
Do you have any teaching experience?
Yes, over time, I've been involved in various capacities. I've served as clinical associate professor at the Department of Neurology at Wayne State University Medical School in Detroit, Michigan, from I believe somewhere in 1988 to 1987 through a few years ago when I effectively retired or resigned because of the geographical distance that became a problem, because my office is about 25 miles away from the campus of the University Hospital, and I basically could not run there, attend to the rounds and teaching sessions and continue my work here, my day-to-day work here in the city of Pontiac, where my office is.
Okay, now, you mentioned your day-to-day work. What is that day-to-day work?
My day-to-day work is medical legal investigation of death. That is a statutory obligation, and my position here is governed by the state statute. The state statute is called the Medical Examiners Act of the State of Michigan, and it requires me, among other people who are involved in this, to open up medical legal death investigation and any sudden suspicious or unexplained death that needs to be addressed at any given time. The purpose of that is to establish the cause, why someone died, and the manner of death, how that came upon this person. So those are the two critical issues that ought to be addressed as compliance to the statutory requirements, and also to review those findings to paper. Over time, of course, we have electronic database and everything, but we still follow the letter of the law here and review things to paper.
All right. And in your job as a medical examiner and also a forensic pathologist, you conduct autopsies, do you not?
Yes, I actually conducted 6 of them over the weekend, 4
Okay.
on Saturday and 2 yesterday.
All right. Can you estimate, and if you can, fine, if you can't, can you estimate approximately how many autopsies you've done over your career?
I can't, but roughly it will be in thousands, because I've been in this line of work for almost 40 years, and in the earlier days when I worked in Detroit for County of Wayne, I was very, very busy. I remember that in 1988 I performed approximately 1,200 autopsies that year only. So it was in those days, many years ago. It was 36, 37 years ago now. But things have slowed down, and obviously I moved to a different jurisdiction. But bottom line would be thousands. How many?
All right.
10,000, 1,000, 8,000. I can't tell, because I don't keep the track of that.
That's sufficient. As a forensic pathologist and a neuropathologist, have you testified in any trials?
This is the first this week, but yes, in a direct in person, in local court, district court, circuit court, throughout the state of Michigan and coast to coast, from the East Coast to West Coast and down to Alabama and Louisiana and Florida and wherever I was subpoenaed or requested to come in and to provide the interpretations that may be needed.
All right. Your Honor, I submit at this point that Dr. Dragovich is to be certified as an expert in the fields of neuropathology and forensic pathology.
Mr. Truman, Ms. Acord, do you wish to engage in voir dire of the proposed expert witness?
No, Your Honor. We accept
Welcome
him as an
back, Barry
expert.
Carey.
All right, Dr.
First witness of the
Dragovich
day.
is considered an expert in the fields of forensic pathology and neuropathology.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Dr. Dragovich, did you prepare a report for this court in the case of the state of West Virginia versus Natalie Cochran?
Yes, I did, sir.
Okay. I would like to submit this report as an exhibit and whatever defendant's last number is.
It'll be defendant's exhibit number 11, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Just count the pages.
I didn't remember. Now, Dr. Dragovich, because of the wonders of technology, I cannot hand you this report, but do you have a copy of the report you submitted? At the top, it's identified in the top as Oakland County, Michigan. And there's various information there, including your name and Chief of Forensic Pathology. It's dated January 6th of 2025. And do you have that report, which numbers 3 pages?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm going to ask you questions related to this report. All right?
That's fine.
I want to set this here so I don't forget it.
Okay.
Now, on page 1 of that report, and if you would, follow along with me. At the bottom, it has a section called Materials Reviewed. Would you please tell this court what materials you reviewed in preparation for this report and your testimony?
Yes, I will. Thank you. Number 1 would be Heredity General Hospital records regarding Michael Cochran. Number 2 would be Charleston Area Medical Center records regarding Michael Cochran. Number 3 would be a report of the post-mortem examination, case number WB-2019-3671. Michael Cochran, deceased, issued by Piotr Kubicek, MD, on September 3rd, 2019. Number 4, the autopsy photograph. Number 5 would be report the re-examination and examination of the remains of Michael Cochran, deceased, performed by Dr. Paul S. Uribe, MD, on July 11th, 2023. And then medical report of Diane R. Krieger, MD, based on record review issued on April 13th, 2023.
Do you believe that the totality of those records informs you enough to make an informed decision and to give your opinion and testimony here today in this case?
Yes.
On page 2 of your report,
Yes, sir.
you have a section titled Brief Case Synopsis and Issues to be Addressed. Would you give a brief synopsis of this case as you understand it and the issues you were to address?
Well, this is an unfortunate death of a 38-year-old man who was a bodybuilding enthusiast, and based on the information, that took an excessive amount of clomiphene sulfate supplements that he purchased in Mexico. Subsequently developed seizures, and that same day, which was February 6, 2019, as indicated, and lost consciousness or lost his balance and struck his head during a fall at home. Then became.
Let me stop you right there.
Yes, sir.
Did this information about the circumstances come from your review of the medical records?
This was the account provided throughout and matched with other accounts from the records and from the authorities as well, I believe.
Okay.
Because that was the statement provided by the spouse of Mr. Cochran.
Right. But what I'm getting at is you have, strike that. That's sufficient. Thank you. Would you please go on with your synopsis?
He was taken to a local medical center and emergency room, and subsequently where he was documented as suffering from hypoglycemia, and then he was taken to Charleston area medical center for continued treatment, but in the comatose state. And then because of the profound encephalopathy, he was transferred to hospice care and pronounced 5 days later, that is on February 11th of 2019.
What is encephalopathy?
Encephalopathy, its simple translation means suffering of the brain. And encephalopathy can be caused by various unfavorable factors that may negatively affect the brain function. So it might be lack of oxygen, it might be lack of glucose, might be traumatic encephalopathy where there is interference with adequate blood supply to the brain, or various toxic encephalopathies upon exposure to either poisonous gases or poisonous substances in so many different ways. There may be also endogenous encephalopathies from in a person suffering of
One moment. What's endogenous? Would you explain that to the jury?
Endogenous coming from within the body, from alien organs from within the body, which generally would happen as a result of liver failure and kidney failure or combination thereof. They can also come from various other endocrinopathies, meaning the diseases of endocrine system, diseases of the glands with internal secretion that control our metabolic functioning day to day in any of our bodies worldwide.
Can you state that encephalopathy has occurred in this case, Mr. Cochran's brain, just from a physical examination of that brain?
Well, it would be based not on not so much on inquiry, but the fact that there is disturbance of consciousness, and that was the critical part that was documented throughout. That Mr. Cochran was first of all brought from one site, one hospital in semi-comatose state to another hospital where his unconsciousness.
Okay, so can I interrupt you there for just a moment? So it's a combination of your physical analysis of the body as well as his history, which is contained in the medical records. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes, but primarily the fact that there was loss of consciousness and continuously occurring, deepening, and finally being complete, and leading to life support and hospice care.
Can a person have an anatomically normal brain and still have seizures?
Of course, the seizure activity is an abnormal electrical activity, and oftentimes in individuals who have cellular level problems or very localized problems with the brain tissue, there will be creation of abnormal electrical activity without necessarily identifiable focus physically. I mean, one examines the brain and does not find any such reasonable substrate, as we call it, or change in the tissue to account for a occurrence of abnormal electrical activity that we refer to as seizure. However, in many other situations, that is possible and that can be clearly identified. So you can go either way depending on each individual case. Every single individual on this planet is slightly different than anybody else, and one cannot generate some statistical projection about one person vis-a-vis the other person until there is complete examination and a full assessment, a full examination of this person's brain.
Okay, now I have another question at this time. Can a person suffer a brain injury without external signs of injury? For instance, can a person lose consciousness, fall to the ground and not have an actual observable injury on the outside of their skull.
Yes, that is possible.
Okay. Now, in this case, Mr. Cochran had seizures. That's documented in all the records, correct?
Yes, sir.
From your review of everything in this case, could Mr. Cochran have had seizures due to unknown medications or body enhancement drugs in his system?
Of course, it's possible. Yes, there are quite a few drugs that can create compromised brain function and actually start the abnormal electrical activity.
Okay. You talk about in almost the middle of page 2, you say that there were vague circumstances that triggered the investigation into Mr. Cochran's death, exhumation, and autopsy in September 3rd, 2019, the first autopsy. Could you explain or elaborate on what you mean by the vague circumstances?
Well, there was somehow generated a suspicion that the demise of Mr. Cochran was not what was represented at the time of his demise, and then the investigation was opened up, carried out, and ended up with an exhumation of the remains.
Okay, now, the first exhumation was done September 3rd of 2019.
Correct.
Mr. Cochran passed away, I believe it was somewhere around February. Sorry, do you remember the date that he passed away?
Yeah, Big Lambert, yes.
Okay, February 11th of 2019, correct?
Yes. Yes.
So the first autopsy was done 7 months after Michael Cochran's death. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And this autopsy was done by Dr. Kubitschek, who was the West Virginia medical examiner. Did you review Dr. Kubitschek's report of the autopsy and exhumation?
I did.
Okay. Was Dr. Kubitschek's ultimate findings and conclusion that the autopsy findings themselves were inconclusive and the cause of death was undetermined and the manner of death was undeterminable?
Yes, sir.
What is the cause of death?
The cause of death is anatomical finding in the body or on the body that explain why a particular individual died. This may be the finding of an infarct, finding of blockage of the major blood vessel or the coronary blood vessel, major bleed in the brain, tumor with metastases that stops the vital function of the body, a wound by firearm, wound by sharp 2x4 used to bash someone's head, et cetera, et cetera. So a demonstrable, understandable, or defining anatomical finding within the body or on the body of a particular person.
So is it your job as a forensic pathologist to look for the anatomical evidence of why someone dies, the cause of death? Is that your function? One of them.
Yes, it is. That's the basic function, and it is in the most statutes throughout the union. It calls for a forensic pathologist or medical examiner or coroner to establish the cause of death based on such endeavor.
Just as an aside, what exactly is a forensic pathologist?
A forensic pathologist is a public pathologist. Word forensic comes from Latin word for, which is a place of public gathering, and in such way it depicts a forensic pathologist, whether a man or a woman, working in that capacity on behalf of the public and being called upon to interpret any such finding for the benefit of the public, like in a court of law or in the media or any place where such need exists.
So there's some degree of interpretation in this, which is based on your medical knowledge. Wouldn't that be a fair statement?
Yes, sir.
What is the manner of death? What does that term mean?
Manner of death is how death came upon a person, meaning the physical circumstances combined with those findings on the body or within the body. And there are worldwide 5 categories of manner of death. There's a natural death, where there are causes from within the body that result in someone's death. Then there is homicide, where there is death resulting from a purposeful act of another person or person. Then there is a very narrow category of suicide, where death is the result of purposeful act by self and self only. If anyone else is involved, it's a homicide again. Then there is accident as a category of death, where death is the result of untoward effects of someone's act or action, acts of nature, floods, fires, earthquakes, tornadoes, or a person driving a car at a high rate of speed and impacting another vehicle, causing death, or striking a pedestrian somewhere where death results as an untoward effect of death.
Untoward effect of what? You kind of faded out there.
I didn't hear you, sir.
You said an untoward effect of something, and what did you say? You kind of blurted out there.
Untoward, the unpredictable and untoward effect that cannot be interfered with or something along those lines. So, like I said, these are something that for the most part, the result of basically unwilling or unwanted result of someone's act or action.
Okay. Now,
And there is also a last category that provides the opportunity for forensic pathologists to say that they don't know, and that's the undeterminable manner of death.
so undeterminable means they've looked at everything, they can't come to a conclusive determination of the manner of death, so that's called undeterminable, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, you may have covered this in your explanation, but as to manner of death, it's how death comes upon a person, including the physical circumstances surrounding that death. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir.
I want to concentrate on the term homicide. Okay?
Okay.
Would it be a true statement that in determining homicide, which is one of those categories that talk about the manner of death, that homicide, if that's a forensic pathologist's conclusion, it has to be demonstrated by their findings, not assumed? Would that be a correct statement?
Yes.
And when I say demonstrated, that is the actual physical findings, and that's the only possible conclusion. Would that be true?
Yes, sir.
I believe towards the bottom of your page, you're talking about Michael Cochran's nervous system. Okay? And you talk about, and this information came from Dr. Just a moment. Okay, there we go. That information that you described was from the first autopsy done by Dr. Kubitschek. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Can you summarize or describe your description there, or Dr. Kubitschek's description, in layman's terms, so we can understand it? I'm not sophisticated enough to actually understand all of these terms. Can you dummy it down for me?
We are talking about the brain of Mr. Cochran at the time of autopsy, the first autopsy, after the first exhumation, and the report says that everything is fine, that the hard covering of the brain are intact, and the soft coverings are thin and delicate, and cerebral hemispheres are symmetrical, meaning that the parts of the brain are fine. The description basically is referencing the standard appearance of a normal brain when it is taken out of the cranial wall.
Okay.
However,
I want to ask you specific questions on that. Okay.
yes,
Dr. Kubitschek essentially says that Michael Cochran's brain on autopsy was normal. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Well, I have to disagree with that because, this was a decomposed brain. We know it was decomposed brain by the photographs that were provided from that examination.
Okay,
So-
and I want to ask a specific question there.
Yes, sir.
A person's brain on autopsy after death, and after 7 months of death and burial, what would you expect that person's brain to be? And by that, does the decomposition affect the brain so it shrinks?
A decomposition means falling apart. The tissue is disintegrating. The tissue is breaking up completely. So the brain itself gets fluidy and falls apart. So it is not the same as when it's freshly removed from a cranial ball, someone that has passed away within hours prior to that or within a couple of days prior.
Okay, now I want to ask you a question there. Would a decomposed brain that's falling apart, would that be expected to weigh less than a normal brain?
Well, probably it will, and it's relatively low to mid brain weight. I cannot say specifically on the account of the documented brain weight, but it has the tendency to decrease the actual brain weight and to blur the distinction between the gray matter and the white matter of the brain, which would be the areas to look for any changes in a history like this, in this particular case.
Okay, now, it was documented in the medical records that Michael Cochran had, I'll call it an enlarged brain. Do you recall that?
Yes. Swollen brain.
Swollen, expanded.
Yes.
Would these results that Michael Cochran's brain appeared essentially normal, even though it had decomposed over 7 months, would that be likely to confirm that he had an enlarged brain or swollen brain prior to death?
Well,
Would it be an
we
indicator?
cannot.
Would it be an indicator?
It's not a situation where you can make an inference from the decomposing brain about something that is being reported, objectively documented by radiographic imaging.
Okay, all right, so you can't really make that determination based just on the post-mortem autopsy. Wouldn't that be correct?
Well, it's not on this post-mortem examination.
That's what I'm getting at. This post-mortem autopsy.
Of course not, because of the inevitable change, the breakdown of tissue throughout the human body over a period of 7 months.
Okay. Is the timeliness of an autopsy important in conducting your medico-legal investigation of someone's death?
Yes, sir. It is of critical importance.
Okay. Would it be a fair statement that in Michael Cochran, his body, which was examined 7 months after death, was too decomposed to rule out important anatomic findings such as infection, pancreatic tumors, and in doing a complete toxicology report. Is that a fair statement? It was too decomposed for those things.
Well, it has to be, the answer has to be slightly modified. Decomposition definitely creates a serious impediment. However, sometimes one can find presence of a tumor because tumor tissue is not sometimes as conducive to falling apart as the rest of the normal tissue. So there are exceptions all the way, but as a general proposition, the decomposition of the remains is a major impediment for adequate diagnostic findings.
And in this particular autopsy of Mr. Cochran, the decomposition made it pretty much impossible to determine if he had such things as pancreatic tumors. Would that be a fair statement?
Well, it would be a fair statement, and I concur there with the conclusion of the doctors that performed the autopsy, the first autopsy at the time.
And is it true that the pancreas, under normal circumstances, provides the body with insulin?
Yes, it is specific parts of the pancreas. The islet provides data cells from the pancreatic islet provide insulin for the general functioning of the body.
Now, if a person has pancreatic tumors, that affects their production of insulin. Is that a true statement?
Well, different tumors of pancreas give different, basically different effects. There may be a tumor of the islet cells, like that we refer to as insulinoma, that can provide large amounts of, or abnormal amounts of insulin to the body. Now, there may be cancer of the head of the pancreas that may break down the pancreas completely and cause pancreatic necrosis as well throughout. I mean, there are all kinds of variable possibilities.
I want to concentrate on this particular analysis of Mr. Cochran's pancreas post-mortem. Now, as a general proposition, insulin controls the body's blood sugar levels. Is that true?
Yes.
Would you explain what hypoglycemia is?
Hypoglycemia means, in translation, low circulating sugar in blood.
Okay. So some sort of pancreatic disorder in a normal person produces insulin, which controls the blood sugar. And if the blood sugar in the body is low, isn't that a definition of hypoglycemia, HYPO?
Yes.
And is it also true that when a person dies and decomposition sets in, that the pancreas, being an organ, an internal organ, is one of the first things to decompose?
Well, yes, because pancreas is also a very active exocrine gland producing procteolytic enzymes. And when the circulation stops, those cells break down and those enzymes leach out, and there is rapid autolysis and decomposition of pancreatic tissue.
Okay. And as a general proposition, internal organs, of which the pancreas is one, are the first things to break down or decompose post-mortem.
Well, it depends on the rate of preservation due to the ambient temperatures and other factors. But if you're looking at something that, like in this case, this will be the likely pattern of relatively progressive decomposition or internal organs and tissues primarily, and by that meaning the internal organs, and then ultimately what is left of the skin and subcutaneous tissue, and then the bony skeleton, because that lasts the most.
Okay, so internal organs break down first, then the external skin, things like that, and then last is the skeletal system. Is all of that correct? Okay. Did Dr. Kubitschek, in his report, mention anything about embalming?
No.
I want to kind of switch gears here and go into a discussion of Dr. Uribe's findings and his reports. And you address those at the bottom of page 2. All right?
Yes.
Now, Dr. Uribe's exhuming of Michael's body and his subsequent report is based on the exhumed remains of Michael, which took place July 11th, 2023, about 4 years after Michael's death. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you comment on the greater or lesser extent of Michael Cochran's body? Was it more decomposed, less decomposed, or the same as when Dr. Kubitschek did his examination?
Well, certainly the decomposition progressed, and one would expect it to progress over so many years. And I believe that good Dr. Uribe said that the samples of decomposed human tissues cannot yield any reliable analysis.
Okay. So there was less to work with, less to examine in terms of toxicology, things like that, than there was about 3 years before when Dr. Kubitschek did his examination. Is that correct?
Well, I would say that there was nothing good, no good information coming from Dr. Kubitschek, and there could not have been any better coming from the second exhumation
would it be a fair statement that when Dr. Uribe conducted his examination and findings, Michael Cochran's body was too decomposed to rule out important anatomic findings? Again, like infection, pancreatic tumors, and doing a complete toxicology.
Yes.
Dr. Uribe goes through his examinations, his reports, his reliance on other reports, especially Dr. Krieger's. And he comes up with Michael Cochran's death was a homicide. Can you comment on that?
Well,
Let me ask you, first of all, according to your examination of everything, do you believe the evidence obtained through autopsies, reports, etc., would substantiate a finding of homicide as opposed to undetermined or undeterminable? Do you think Dr. Uribe was correct, or do you think Dr. Kubitschek was correct?
I sincerely believe that Dr. Kubitschek was more correct because he did provide the objective assessment and provided also the delimitation of forensic pathologists' capacity to make a determination on the basis of nothing. I think Dr. Uribe tried to bury the report with, again, negative findings, completely negative findings from both autopsies, and made a claim of he might have believed what he said. However, for every such belief, there ought to be a factual evidentiary substantiation.
Okay,
In order to-
let me stop you right there. So, any manner and cause of death has to be substantiated by what? What did you say? Objective, objective clinical findings, correct?
Anatomical findings,
Okay.
because we're talking of the autopsies here.
All right.
So, objective, demonstrable anatomical findings that are tangible and understandable to everyone, leaving no doubt.
Do you believe that Dr. Uribe's opinion that the manner and cause of death are substantiated and resulted in a homicide, do you believe those findings, those ultimate findings in Dr. Uribe's report are based more on assumptions than the objective findings that you talked about?
I believe that there are no objective findings to substantiate Dr. Uribe's determination. That his opinion is an attempt to bridge the gap of the unknown, and that bridge has to be created properly so that there is complete responsible understanding of everyone that is to use such a report.
Is Dr. Uribe's report and opinion based on acceptable anatomic and toxicological findings?
No.
So it would be your statement that Dr. Uribe's findings as to Michael's death being a homicide, quote unquote, was not based on actual anatomic and toxicologic findings. Is that correct?
That is correct.
In the middle of the page, you discuss Dr. Krieger's report. And her investigation, reasoning, etc., resulted in her finding that Michael Cochran's hypoglycemia, in her opinion, was due to insulin administration, and she classifies that as a strong possibility. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
Does the basic medico-legal requirements, do they require accurate determinations of the cause and manner of death that are not based on a definite maybe, as Dr. Krieger states, but rather on a threshold beyond reasonable doubt? Isn't that the correct standard in this report?
Well, it is, because we're talking about test investigation, and also the discrepancy is, as I pointed out, Dr. Krieger is a phenomenal clinician, but Dr. Krieger is not burdened by the duty to define the cause and the manner of death. So the option that she provided is, in all fairness, a good suggestion for furthering the investigation, but the buck stops with forensic pathology, and the person has to provide to the public textual evidence as far as the cause of death and textual evidence about the manner of death. Because the administration of insulin being a strong possibility can come as a result of self-administration, administration by someone else, and then administration by self for the purpose of other things like bodybuilding and other combination of various substances, and resulting in accidental outcomes.
And her report doesn't include who might have injected this insulin, when it occurred, or how it occurred. Would that be a fair statement?
Well, it's a fair statement, but we have to understand that Dr. Krieger is not in the business of examining dead bodies.
Okay. On page 3, there's a paragraph that begins, when classifying the manner of death as a homicide, you state one has a professional obligation to substantiate that determination by reasonable, tangible evidence as someone's purposeful act. Would you explain the rest of that paragraph and your findings?
Well, there has to be evidence about anything, and then that evidence has to be interpreted in a reasonable manner for everyone to understand. For example, it's very simple to say, well, gunshot wounds was the cause of death, and someone discharging the purposefully, obviously, that's a purposeful act of firearm, caused it. Then you have a reasonable conclusion of the homicide and a reasonable demonstrable evidence. If someone takes a 2x4 and that is someone's head and they die, then you have blunt force head trauma caused by 2x4 has obviously a demonstrable purposeful act because someone bashed someone's head, or if someone has a knife and stabbed someone, thrusted the knife into someone's body once or multiple times, that's a purposeful act. If the individual dies of bleeding caused by that sharp force injury, it's very simple and demonstrable. But in a case like this, there is no information about all those critical circumstances, and one cannot make a certainty about the claim that there was injection, was it self-injection on to render someone dead, or self-injection to render someone more powerful, build up the greater muscle, or something like that, which first would be a suicide, second would be an accident, or injection by someone else, about what we don't have any evidence that would be a homicide. And if we have to be certain about that before we issue a reasonable, congruent forensic opinion. And forensic opinion is a critical document that can provide the basis for further legal action or for no further legal action.
So in summary, do you believe Dr. Uribe's conclusion that Michael Cochran's death was a homicide is the correct conclusion?
If it cannot be substantiated, and he could not substantiate it by physical evidence, then it's not correct. And it is under a grave degree of doubt.
Okay. So you agree with Dr. Kubitschek that the correct findings and conclusion is that the cause and manner of Michael Cochran's death is undetermined and undeterminable. Would that be a fair statement?
At this point, yes. At the point of exhumation performed 7 months later, as they did at the time. I don't know what the results might have been had the autopsy been performed a day or two after his demise.
But as we sit here today, after reviewing everything, do you believe Michael Cochran's death was the manner and cause were undetermined and undeterminable?
Yes, sir.
Just as an aside, now your report is coming about 5 years after Michael Cochran's death. Would it have made any difference or been any benefit to exhume Michael Cochran's body a third time after all this passage of time so that you could personally conduct an autopsy? Would that have been of any benefit at all?
If I believed such a thing, I would have brought it up a long time ago whenever you called me to ask me to look at this case. But I don't think that would be just a waste of resources for no good purpose, no valid purpose.
So that wouldn't change any of your findings that you've testified to today. Would that be good?
That is correct.
Have all of your findings and the testimony you've given here today, do they meet the standard of others in your profession?
I firmly believe so.
They're to a reasonable degree of medical certainty. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
If there were questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's take our mid-morning break at this time. Members of the jury will break for 10 or 15 minutes. Please do not discuss the case among yourselves or with anyone else. You may go with the bailiff to your jury room.
Your Honor, I probably should have done this before the jury left, but I did not actually move for the admission of Dr. Dragovich's report. I would like.
All right, so they are on a break and we are on a
Judge.
commentary moment, right?
All right.
Of course, they're still playing out in the
defendants number 11
background.
will be admitted into evidence.
So
Doctor, we're taking a 10-minute break.
you know, we
and
are
you're welcome to take a
I've been
break
reading
too,
the chat,
and
participating in
to
the chat.
wander away from the camera.
I
Just
think
be
it's real
back, if
easy
you
to
would,
see.
in 10 minutes.
Oh,
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're
y'all can
welcome.
hear them. I should have muted it. It's real easy to see. Well, it's not so easy to see. The whole point of this particular Dr. Dragovich, the whole point, in my opinion, was to absolutely challenge and minimize the testimony from last week. The state's pathologist, Dr. Uribe. Dr. Uribe is the only medical examiner / pathologist, what have you. He was the only expert that said and ruled Michael's death as by way of homicide. And he is the one, if you recall, that gave like the different reasons. He went through like a list of 13 reasons of why a non-diabetic person would have or need insulin in their body. He was the only one. And he went through that checklist, like 13 different reasons. And he was saying how he didn't find this. So it was no medical reason for him to have the insulin in his body. Dr. Uribe was also the one who said that because of like what they call it, hypoglycemia that Michael was in when he went to the hospital with his blood sugar being so low and the hospital tried to stabilize it. He was the one who said that it had to have been insulin in his body in order to get the results that they got in the hospital when they tried to treat his hypoglycemia. So he was the one who said, hey, this is murder, basically. So the whole point of this whole testimony was to say that Dr. Uribe was saying all of that based on no definite proof. That's what this doctor was saying in a nutshell. It took a long time to get it out. And what's really weird is, you know, we have seen these defense attorneys literally bulldog these witnesses, even their own witnesses, and get them to say yes or no and make it plain. Maybe this attorney today, maybe he's still a little bit sleepy, but this would have been a great time to force simple, direct answers on a couple of them questions. This doctor only gave a plain and clear answer on the last question. Yes. You guys are joined in and tuned into Trial Watch with Demetra. We are watching part 8 of the Ponzi scheme wife trial. This trial is expected to end this week on Wednesday. With that being the case, if they think it's going to conclude on Wednesday, I sure hope that the reward of us listening and being patient and getting through this type of testimony, I'm hoping that the reward for our duty here, our civic duty and our paying attention will be that we get to hear the defendant testify today. I don't know because the trial is happening in real time. We're like 2 hours behind. So therefore, we're able to fast forward through this. But I surely hope that the defendant will be testifying today. All right. Court is now back in session. Please hit the like if you have not hit it yet. And yes, Living, I like the first doctor better myself. BA says the state better ask him some tough questions or they're
Dr.
about to
Jagger,
lose
can
his
you
case.
see me and hear me
Right.
okay?
They've been about to lose his
I can
case.
hear you.
Okay.
Sure.
In your report, you stated that Michael took an excessive amount of enclomiphene citrate. Is that right?
I couldn't hear this part. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay. In your report, you stated that Michael Cochran took an excessive amount of enclomiphene citrate. Is that correct?
yes.
Where did that information come from?
From the materials that I reviewed. I believe that was the account that was provided by his spouse.
Okay. Were you aware that that substance was tested by the FBI?
Again, something I've learned. Was I aware of what?
That substance had been tested by the FBI?
I'm going to object to that, Your Honor. That hasn't been established yet. There's no reference to what substance, how it was achieved, anything about the specifics.
Your Honor, that has been established. It has been brought into evidence already with both of the FBI gentlemen that testified here. And you heard Lieutenant Bledsoe testify that he received that bottle from Donna Bolt, who advised that she received it from the defendant.
Objections overruled. Pose the question again so that the witness can hear.
Dr. Dragovich, were you aware that the bottle of eclomiphene citrate provided by the defendant was tested by the FBI?
No.
So you were not aware that that bottle was actually found to contain letrozole and not enclomiphene citrate?
No. Yes,
Your Honor,
that's correct. That's correct. I do not.
In
May we
your
approach the bench, Your Honor?
All right.
Child, I guess he felt like he had to perform more for the people who paying him. Why couldn't he give these simple, dry, straight to the point answers? Yes, no. Now I know some things need explanations, but it's some things that is really okay if you just say yes or no. You guys, I am so excited. I will be premiering. I don't know if I'm gonna do it this evening, tonight, or but I do have a true crime original documentary. It's called Chopped and Screwed, the story of Steve Drobber. I finished that last night. So I plan on premiering it and then doing a live discussion on it. So stay tuned for that. Please hit the bell. I think this is going to be maybe like my third, if not fourth, original true crime documentary. And I'm always so excited about those. So I can't wait for you guys to see it. I don't know if I'm going to premiere tonight and then have a live behind it, but I'll let you guys know. Or maybe I should. I don't know. I don't know when I'm going to premiere, but it's going to be good. I wonder if we're gonna hear from the victim's mother. That's the daughter right there with the glasses. That's the daughter. I believe that's the son. That's the girl who I've been hollering about that she the daughter the whole time, and she wasn't even the daughter. I don't know who she is. You have a good case when you watched it live. What case is that? Which case is that? Let me grab my coffee. I left it on the cup. No. Okay, I'm back. That's one thing about these trials, you know, unlike TV, the TV, this is the part that these are the parts of the trial, TV trials. Oh yeah. Girl, yes, that's a big case, the murder trials. That would have to be a best of court trial that what court trial watch that we would do. If we did the we did a best of the murder case, we might as well do a best of the Casey Anthony case or some of them other big ones. That's why the big ones, you know, and I did not watch the murder trial. I watched all the datelines and all that stuff about it, but I didn't watch the murder trial. Another good one was that Chad Daybell case. That Chad or the Lori Bello case. That was the Lori Bello case was really good. The trial. Another good trial that just happened in the fall of 2024 was that cop that young black cop in Georgia. Now that was a great trial that I wish I would have been watching with you guys. You know, but that trial was really good. I can't remember his name right now, but he was a trip. I would be obsessed with that case. So many turns in him. So you watched that trial live? I think you said that earlier here. I watched it live. Well, we could definitely put it on a docket for a best of. I know one thing's for certain. After I do the gavel to gavel trial for that's coming up, Jamaria Sessions, then I'm gonna take, you know, I'm gonna wait for the I'm not doing, you know, back to back gavel to gavels. That's a little much. I'm doing, you know, picking the big ones. Like I already knew that I was gonna do Jamaria Sessions. I really want to do that case. What's the man name? The one where the mama was sending the daughter and her boyfriend to go sleep in another room. I can't think of that the name right now. But that trial is supposed to start like in March or something like that. And then they got one way in the fall that I say would be good for gavel to gavel. But I'm gonna spread those out, you know. And in between, I do the best of cases. So yeah, we could probably definitely look at the murder this week. At the end, this week we're gonna finish the best of the Burn Powell trial. That's what I'm gonna do tonight instead of the my documentary. Because I promise y'all we're gonna get through the children's testimony and Rusty's. So that's what we'll do tonight. And I know I'm coming back tonight. I'm well rested. And I gotta get these trials, these 2 trials, I gotta get them done by the end of this week so we can be ready for gavel to gavel next week. Yep. I guess I could have fast forwarded, but I took that time moment to buy commentary.
Certainly.
Okay, here we go. Uh-oh. Is he finna? Oh, I thought he was about to say something. I love him. I like that attorney. Uh-oh. Okay, so we're jumping back into the testimony of Dr. Drogovich.
Did you see any evidence that indicated
Let's go.
letrozole or even enclomiphene citrate overdose or usage?
Not that I remember, no, ma'am.
And where did you get the information that Michael had a seizure?
The hospital, right?
Do you know where that initially came from in your review of the records?
Well, it would be also from the account that the file was provided at the time of the bishop's trial.
And were you aware of any seizures being observed in the hospital setting?
It seems to me that there were some, but I don't remember specifically every page from the medical records.
That's okay. I understand it was a lot of records. Did anything in the medical records substantiate that Michael had a seizure that you recall?
Again, I don't have the materials in front of me, so I can't recall specifically. There was multiplied reference of encephalopathy, but it seems to me that there were references to seizures, either as historical, being presented at the time, or happening there. But I cannot. It's all blurred now in my mind. I'm sorry.
Okay. In your report, you stated that there was evidence that Michael had a head injury. Is that right?
Yes, that was also from the account upon arrival to the hospital.
Was there any evidence that you recall in the actual medical records that indicate that a traumatic head injury had occurred?
No, that was not addressed in the medical record.
And in your report, you also stated that the defendant was the one who took the deceased to the hospital. Would it surprise you to know that that was not accurate based on the testimony we've heard?
I lost the couple of words there. You got blurred. I'm sorry. Can you repeat it?
Sure. In your report, you stated that the defendant was actually the one who took Michael Cochran to the hospital. Do you recall that? I think we might be having some connectivity issues, Judge.
Are you having difficulty hearing the question, Doctor?
No. I'm looking at my second page there, and yes, that was my impression that Natalie Cochran brought him to Raleigh General Hospital emergency room.
Would it surprise you to know, Doctor, that based on the evidence we've received, the defendant actually allowed Mr. Cochran to lay on the couch for 7 to 8 hours, and a friend actually transported him to the hospital later that day?
That may be the case. I mean, I was not there. I only put what I read was the information I had in order to kind of gain what was happening at a time.
We'll go back into the medical records. Your report indicates that Mr. Cochran's initial blood glucose at Raleigh General was 76, followed by a next reading of 24. Is that right?
Yes.
However, the evidence actually indicates that the initial blood glucose on arrival was 21. So where in the records did you locate that information?
I can't tell you off the top of my head, but I know for the fact that there were references to low blood glucose. And when what particular level was at the time of particular hospitalization, I cannot recall now.
Doctor, did you review the MRI of Michael Cochran's brain that was obtained at CAMC on 2/8 of 19?
No, but I read the report and there was evidence of encephalopathy there.
In that report, isn't it true that the diagnosis was actually diffuse hypoglycemic encephalopathy?
Yes, that was written in, yes.
And what does that indicate to you, doctor?
I'm sorry?
What does that indicate to you, that diagnosis?
Diagnosis indicates that there is a hypoglycemic encephalopathy, and that's the point of organization of trying to treat the condition and also to find out why and how this encephalopathy occurred.
Doctor, in your professional opinion, is a blood glucose of 21 compatible with life?
It may or may not be, depending on how fast one reacts to correcting its level of circulating glucose.
And just very briefly, was it your testimony that, just so I understand, that tumor tissue would decompose more slowly than normal organ tissue?
Well, certain tumor tissues that are so-called solid tumors in certain tissues and organs of the body may be undergoing slower decomposition because they're harder than the surrounding quote-unquote normal tissue. So that can happen. And I've seen that in my practice pretty regularly. To see extremely decomposed body of an individual falling apart, and yet tumor nodules sticking out because they decompose slowly. It depends on the nature of the tumor.
Now, Dr. Uribe and Dr. Krieger were not given the benefit of reviewing one another's reports prior to creating their reports, but you were able to review both of their reports in creating yours. Is that right?
Yes,
And you were hired by the defense, is that correct?
I was contacted by the defense. That's correct, yes, and they asked me to
It's not a trick question, doctor, I promise. I'm not trying to trip you up in any way. Were you compensated for generating a report in this matter, or will you be?
no, I was not. I am certainly not compensated for the time here because this is my taxpayer's time, and my government will send a bill to the lawyers for today. But I think I had about 14 to 16 hours of time put in this, so that was obviously my work after hours. So I will bill for that at my government rate, which is $250 per hour.
Now, when you were creating the report that you generated in this matter, did you initially provide defense counsel with a draft report?
I believe I sent a draft to just see if there was anything else that needed to be added to it.
And did you make changes to your report based on commentary that you received?
Your Honor, please note an ongoing objection to this line of questioning.
Very well, it will be preserved.
I am not sure that I made much in a way, some typo errors because my secretary made some typographic errors, but there might have been something added. I will have to look back and try to compare that and give you the exact answer. But substantial changes, no, of course not.
Is it true that you were asked to go into more detail as to how Drs. Uribe and Dr. Krieger were wrong in that draft report?
No, let me explain something. I don't believe that I ever said anything about Dr. I don't want to butcher her name, Krieger. Dr. Krieger's report is clinically accurate report. I have no arguments with that report. Well, I have no arguments with Dr. Uribe except for his opinion. If Dr. Uribe, who is my colleague, presented any tangible evidence, I would have not have any opposing opinion. But you know, there wasn't anything, and a forensic pathologist is there to interpret evidence. If there is no evidence, there is nothing to interpret, man.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like this to be marked as the state's next exhibit.
It will be State's Exhibit number 32, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I would also move for the admission of State's 32.
32 is the draft.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Any further objections?
Yes, Your Honor. Just a moment. I object to the admission of this exhibit.
All right, I'll admit it over the defense objections, and I'll preserve the defendant's objections.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Dragovich, in your professional opinion, what killed Michael Cochran?
I don't know.
So you don't believe that the profound hypoglycemia or the swelling on his brain caused by the hypoglycemia contributed to his death in any way?
I'm going to object to one of that question. There's no evidence that his hypoglycemia caused the swelling of his brain. That's a mischaracterization of the evidence.
Your Honor, the diagnosis on that MRI is diffuse hypoglycemic encephalopathy.
I'll overrule the objection. You may continue. Ask the question again, Ms. Akron.
Dr. Dragovich, the question was, you do not believe that the decedent's profound hypoglycemia or the significant swelling on his brain caused by that hypoglycemia led to his death.
I would think that's one of the components, but why and how it happened and what the proximate causes are have not been defined whatsoever. So the autopsy did not reveal anything along the line, and it did not show that on brain examination that there was anything but decomposition changes according to the autopsy report.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I have no further questions.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Redirect, Mr. Selden.
Yes, Your Honor. Can I have just a moment?
Sure.
Uh-oh, it seems like the defense got to regroup. It seems like they got to regroup, and they leaving it all on the guy with the glasses to make something happen real quick. He over there speed reading and everything. And the guy over there with the burgundy tie on with the glasses and the big head, I thought he was like some type of medical what's the word? What's the word? Not assistant. I can't think of the word, but the one who will come in and kind of help him along with the medical part, because it seemed like that's what he was doing. But he seemed to be kind of really, really quiet right now.
Your Honor, procedurally,
Indeed.
I believe that I would like a continuing objection to the last state's exhibit, the alleged draft report. And I believe that there were questions as to whether Dr. Dragovich had received it, what information was exchanged, and Dr. Dragovich at this point has not seen this particular exhibit as entered by the state. I believe procedurally he would have to see this exhibit before we proceed further on it.
Well, he referenced it in his testimony, and I've given you a running objection. I've preserved your exceptions, and I'll continue to do so.
All right, first of all, I would like to get the state's last exhibit.
All right, it should be up here with the clerk.
Uh-oh, he not pleased at all. That's because the draft say one thing, and then he not doctored, but it's like that's why they asked him, did you change your opinion based on the what they was telling him, the narrative from the defense? And he said no. But now they just entered the last two pieces of evidence that shows that he
I'm going to
did.
ask you some questions on this
Right,
last
BA.
state's exhibit, which is stamped draft on it. Okay?
Okay.
And I admit that I prepared this, or you prepared this draft report. I received it and I made some notations on it. Given that, I'm going to go through these alleged changes. I circled your initial submission date of December 12th of 2024, and I asked you to change the date to January 6th of 2025 because that's when you submitted your final version of this report. Would you remember that, or does that seem correct to you?
Yeah, that seems correct, yes.
Okay. On the second page of this draft report, I circled a date that you had listed as February 16th, 2019, as the date when Michael Cochran's seizures first started around noon. I corrected that because that was an incorrect date. I notated that the correct date was not February 16th, but February 6th of 2019. Do you recall that?
Yeah, that was a typographic error on the back of my type here.
Okay.
They're trying to type up a load of record daily, and these things happen. So anything that's wrong tends to be corrected.
Okay. And I circled the word ALL and pointed out that was a typographical error. It should be FALL for fall, not all. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In one line, you're talking about some information that was relayed. You put your client, and I circled that and asked you to clarify it to Natalie Cochran. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. In the second paragraph on that page, I circled a representation in that report that Michael Cochran's suspicious circumstances of his death triggered an investigation that resulted in an exhumation and autopsy, and you had 8 months. I corrected that to 7 months. Was that correction proper?
Yes, sir.
On the last page, in the third paragraph, you end that paragraph with the word infant. I circled that and put a notation to admit it. Michael Cochran was not an infant. Is that correct?
Yes, I was puzzled by that word, but I didn't want to go back to my secretary and criticized her for putting a word that didn't belong. But at the end of the sentence, I don't know, maybe she was citing several reports simultaneously, who knows?
Okay, and that correction, you said it was because your secretary maybe was in a hurry, whatever. That doesn't change the substance of your report at all, does it?
No, those are the typographic errors. They are, I suppose, inevitable when one does the work. Only people that don't do anything do not make any mistakes. Mistakes tend to be corrected. That's it.
Okay. And in the next to the last paragraph, you're talking about Dr. Krieger and Dr. Uribe's mischaracterization, or their findings are not credible or well reasoned. I simply made a notation in that paragraph and I asked, can you go into more detail as to how Doctors Uribe and Krieger are wrong? You did make that representation in your report earlier, did you not?
I did.
Okay, so am I asking you to change your report? Am I asking you to do anything that would affect your conclusions?
No, sir.
As to your eventual final report, do any of these changes affect your conclusions, the validity, anything in your reasoning?
Absolutely not, sir.
All right.
Exactly. They fudging reports or cutting and copying and pasting. How would she get infant? I hope the state redirects.
You were not present when there was witness testimony or Drs. Uribe and Dr. Krieger gave their testimony. You didn't hear any of that testimony. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. There were some questions directed about the enclophamine vial. I submit that that enclophamine vial was given to the FBI by Michael Cochran's mother, Donna. Does that information change anything in your report or cause you any concern about your conclusions?
No.
And it's true, is it not, that Michael Cochran's medical records contain previous seizures that occurred in October 31st through the first week or two in November. That's documented in the medical records, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And I believe there was some mischaracterization about Natalie Cochran driving Michael to the hospital and some misrepresentations about that. The testament.
To characterizing the prosecution's questions as mischaracterization and misrepresentation.
Sustained.
The previous testimony that in this case shows that although Natalie Cochran herself didn't drive the car to the hospital, she was in the car with Michael, with other people, when Michael was taken to the hospital. Would that information change anything in your report and your conclusions at all?
No, sir.
One moment, Your Honor.
Okay.
So I made the point that at least the state is making some effort to at least rattle the defense a little bit. I think this may be the most rattled I've seen the defense. But Living says right, but right, finally the prosecution doing that. But she posed the question. Living said, but it might be too late. Is it too late? We shall see.
Dr. Drakovich, there were some questions by the prosecution about who hired you, who's paying your bills, etc. Would it interest you to know that Natalie Cochran's representation is court appointed and the state of West Virginia would be paying any of your billings? Do you understand that?
Wow, I didn't know that.
I did not
Interesting.
know the particulars. There's no difference whatsoever. As I said, in criminal cases, I apply for my time after hours, my government rate. My government rate is $2.50 per hour, and for this testimony, you will be getting an invoice from my government for these several hours, and for the rest of the hours, I will be sending you the invoice for that same, based on that same rate.
Would any of the questions on cross-examination change your conclusion that the cause and manner of Michael Cochran's death is undetermined and undeterminable?
No, sir.
And in answer to the prosecutor's question, what killed Michael Cochran? You simply stated you don't know. And all of that reasoning is in your report. Is that correct?
That is correct. And consequences are also correct in the medical record and in the radiographic imaging. But the cause and the manner are not and cannot be defined on the basis of that.
I have no more questions.
Anything further, Ms. Acorn? No, Your Honor. All right. Any reason to hold Dr. Dragovich?
Not on behalf of the state, Your Honor.
No.
Thank you very much, Doctor. You are excused.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
All right, so I don't see.
All right, come up.
I don't
please.
think that witness was very impactful at all. And we just spent an hour, almost 2 hours on him, 2 hours and 7 minutes. Not exactly, but 2 hours or so. And literally, when it came down to it, he didn't have the reports. He talking about he can't remember. He seemed to recall. But at the same time, his whole testimony was supposed to be about disputing the state's pathologist, and he was disputing it based on that they was making assumptions and that they didn't have any actual proof. But then you sit there on cross-examination and make assumptions. So strange. They must be at lunch, y'all. Okay, so they went to lunch or something, and they back. Trial watch with Demetria. We getting into the look like the second half of the day. They went to their lunch. So we're an hour or so behind them. And it's not time now for the defense to call another witness after ineffective 2 hours and not knowing a doggone thing, hard to understand, didn't have the reports in front of him, no definite answers, and then the question of, was he fudging the reports? So that was a good case of lawyering, I think, in my opinion, from the state to even get that piece of evidence put in. Now, if I was the state, I would have redirected. And went through each and every one of them revisions again to put my own narrative on it. Okay. And we found out that she got state appointed attorney. She must have got real broke.
Continue with the defense case in chief.
I thought she had
You may
paid big
call
money
your
for these
next,
people.
Witness, Mr. Selden.
Let's go.
Thank you, Your Honor. The defense calls Dr. Zachary Halsey.
Oh, Lord, not another doctor. I got the hiccups. Child. Okay, I look like the defense is thinking this one here, we got to make something happen. That's him. What kind of doctor he is? He look casual, and he look like he's gonna be easy to
Raise your right
understand.
hand, please, sir. Do you
All
swear
right, let me
or
go on
affirm to
mute.
tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? You may have a seat right there.
Good afternoon, Dr. Halsey. As you probably know, I'm Stanley Selden. I'm one of the co-counsel for the defendant, Natalie Cochran. First of all, what is your full name, and would you please spell it for the clerk?
Zachary Tyler Halsey, Zachary, and then Halsey is Halsey.
Where are you currently employed?
I'm currently employed by Access Health in Daniels,
How long have you worked there?
approximately 10 and a half years.
What's your title?
Family physician.
Are you licensed in the state of West Virginia as a family physician?
Yes.
Approximately how long have you been licensed as a family physician?
Approximately 7 years, plus then 3 more for training. So roughly the 10 years.
That's fine. Do you have any certification as a family practitioner?
Yes, through the American College of Osteopathic Family Physicians.
And briefly, what's your training as a family physician? Briefly.
So I had 3 years of family practice training also at Access Health.
Okay. Are you familiar with Natalie Cochran as a pharmacist?
Yes.
And how do you know her as a pharmacist?
She also worked for Access Health as well as gave lectures occasionally for the residency program.
Okay. And if you would speak up a little bit, I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
I
And
got you.
speak into the microphone.
Sure.
Thank you. Approximately how much contact did you have with Natalie Cochran in her capacity as a pharmacist at Access Health?
Approximately 10 to 15 times, probably somewhere like that.
Okay. And over what period of time did that occur?
4 to 5 years. I don't remember when the exact end of the work part was.
Do you know how long Natalie Cochran worked at Access Health as a pharmacist?
I do not know.
Okay. I'd like to call your attention to February 5th of 2019.
Okay.
And I will inform you and everybody else that was the day before Michael Cochran's collapse. Okay.
Sure.
Did you have occasion to see or treat Natalie Cochran on February 5th of 2019?
Yes.
Did she make an appointment?
Yes.
Why did she make an appointment with your office?
On that day, she was having some flu-like symptoms, cough, congestion, shortness of breath, things like that.
Did she complain of body aches?
Yes.
Did you test her for flu and possibly strep?
Yes.
Do you recall what those results were?
Those were negative.
And that doesn't positively rule out those ailments. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Did you give her a shot or a prescription on February 5th of 2019?
No, not on the 5th.
Did you at that day or the next day give her a steroid burst shot for inflammation and other symptoms that she was expressing to you?
It was an oral steroid, but yes, on the 5th.
Okay. Does possibly that a steroid increase the body's blood sugar?
Yes.
As a physician, would it be advisable for Natalie Cochran to take insulin to lower her blood sugar if that was the case?
It is possible to take insulin to lower blood sugar. Yes.
Okay. And just to sum up, on the 5th, February 5th, 2019, she simply didn't feel well.
Correct.
Okay. I call your attention to February 6th, 2019, the next day, and that was the day of Michael Cochran's collapse. Okay?
Okay.
Did Natalie Cochran on that day make an appointment and come into Access Health?
Yes.
Why?
On that day, she had been having some nausea and vomiting overnight.
Was she still complaining of the previous symptoms?
Yes, they were still present.
Was she, or did she ask for, or was she retested again for the flu?
Yes, she was.
And again, what were the results?
It was also negative at that time.
And again, that doesn't absolutely prove she had the flu. It's a test to indicate that.
Sure.
Okay. On February 6, 2019, what treatment was she given that day?
On that day, she was given an injection of promethazine as well as a prescription for oral promethazine.
What's promethazine for? What's it used for?
It is for nausea.
According to your recollection, what time did she come in on February 6th, and approximately what time did she leave?
It was approximately, somewhere between 8 and 8:30 that she was there, and left, probably around 9:30 to 10, somewhere through there.
Okay. Was she there in the early morning for when you opened up?
Yes, so we open at 8 o'clock.
Okay. Now, on these 2 days, Did you have any reason to doubt Natalie Cochran's sincerity about being sick?
No.
Did you conclude that she was sick?
I felt like she was sick at that time, yes.
And as a licensed family physician, if you didn't think she was sick, you wouldn't have prescribed or given her promethazine, right?
Correct.
Because you don't give medication to people that aren't sick or you think they're sick.
Right.
Okay. Now, is one of the side effects of promethazine sleepiness?
It can, yes.
Given that promethazine can cause sleepiness, given Natalie's symptoms and complaints, would you deem it advisable for her to travel, say, on a plane, go to meetings with bankers, etc.? Don't know how long they're going to last. Or would it be more advisable, or would you recommend that she go home and go to bed?
I would certainly say if you're not feeling well, especially with vomiting, to go home and stay in bed.
Now I'd like to kind of change things up a little bit. Did you ever treat or have Gavin Davis as your patient?
Yes.
Did you know that Gavin Davis had an insulin pump for his diabetes type 1 disease?
Yes.
How does an insulin pump work?
So it will secrete insulin based upon the body's needs of how much glucose is in the body.
Is it possible that an insulin pump can run out of the insulin in it or malfunction?
Yes.
How do you fill an insulin pump? Can it be one of two ways? You attach a vial of insulin to it, or you directly inject the insulin?
Yes, that's accurate.
What type of insulin was Gavin Davis's pump filled with?
His was rapid acting insulin. I believe it was Humalog.
Humalog Lispro insulin, right?
Yes.
Okay. Once Humalog insulin enters the body, either by the pump or by injection, how long does it take it to start to work?
Approximately 15 minutes or so.
Okay. How long is it active or working in the body after it's introduced?
4 to 6 hours, somewhere through there.
Were you aware that Natalie Cochran was a diabetic specialist?
Yes, she was in that role with Access Health.
Okay. Did you know that the Davises, Gavin's parents, especially Jennifer, designated Natalie Cochran at one time as an emergency contact for Gavin if they couldn't be reached in an emergency?
No, I do not know that.
Would it be reasonable to have a backup supply of insulin if an insulin pump failed or needed refilling?
Yes.
Would it be reasonable if Natalie Cochran was a neighbor of the Davises and at one point an emergency contact for Gavin, would it be reasonable that she keep a supply of Gavin's Humalog insulin at her home?
It would be reasonable if it was Gavin's. Yes.
And would that be further reasonable if Gavin Davis often visited there or ate food at the Cochran's home?
It would be reasonable.
Now, a person afflicted with diabetes type 1, when they eat food, you have to carefully measure what food they're taking, carbohydrate intake, etc., so you can regulate the insulin to control the blood sugar that comes from their eating. Is that correct?
That would be correct.
Now, is it your understanding that in a diabetic, insulin works to lower blood sugar?
Yes.
Because diabetics, most of them, don't process sugar like normal people. They have an excess of high blood sugar in their system. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Does insulin work to lower blood sugar when it's introduced in the body?
Yes.
Now, wouldn't you believe that if a licensed pharmacist would have access to or be able to get insulin?
I think it would be reasonable that they would know how to get insulin. Yes.
I need a moment, Your Honor.
All right.
The defense is absolutely stretching this, and they absolutely calling it speculation in my book. And what's so funny is this man testifying to stuff that the
I believe that's
Davises
the
said
extent
no.
of my direct examination, Your Honor.
All right, cross-examination, Mr. Truman.
Few questions, Doctor.
Let's go.
There's been a lot of discussion about reasonableness of having Gavin Davis supplied with insulin at the defendant's house. And your answers were that would be reasonable. But if that wasn't the stated reason why that insulin was in the house, would that change your opinion as to how reasonable it would for a house that has non-diabetics?
Sure.
Okay. If you were shown a message from the defendant to Jennifer Davis saying she was going to borrow a bottle for her own treatment, would that change your opinion as to how reasonable it was to have insulin in her house?
Yes.
You were also the treating physician for Michael, or the primary care physician for Michael Cochran?
Yes. At one time.
Okay. You're aware of his allergies?
Yes.
And he was allergic to benzodiazepine?
I believe that was in the chart. Yes.
Okay. And he was also allergic to some of the medication you gave to the defendant on February the 5th, right?
I believe so.
Now, the defense asked you about steroids and how that could increase blood glucose, and insulin would counteract that. And those were fair questions to ask.
Yes.
As her primary care physician, were you treating for any kind of cancer?
No.
I'll object to that, Your Honor. May we approach?
Yes.
Let's go, state, let's go. Let's go. Finally, we got some action, right? And the reason why I'm excited for the state right now is because they had last week, literally last Friday, I got so disgusted with the lackluster performance of the state. How many times they sat there and let stuff ride out? How many times they let their witnesses get just trampled? That I was ready to throw the whole state, the whole prosecution team away over a cliff somewhere. I don't know if West Virginia have cliffs or not, but they must have watchdog commentary. Okay. Living hit that on the head. It seems as though to me, the state watched Straw Watch with Demetra and subscribe to the channel as you should. And now they didn't got it together. Let's go.
Truman.
Doctor, as a primary care physician, were you ever treating her for cancer?
No.
Did you try and verify her statement to you that she was diagnosed at Duke by having cancer?
Technically, no.
Okay. When you say technically, go ahead and
It was
explain.
so we were trying to refer to Duke. It was, there was an office visit where cancer was discussed, and then we were trying to refer to Duke for that.
Did you ever get any results indicating that that was correct?
No,
So from your perspective, you were never able to verify the defendant's statements to you that she had been diagnosed with Duke with cancer.
correct.
You tried, correct?
Yes,
And Duke provided you with nothing.
right. We never got records from that.
Nope. Doctor, the defense asked you about February 6th, and I'd like this marked for identification, please.
States Exhibit 33, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Haney, what's been marked for identification is States 33. Take a moment and glance at that for me, please. Doctor, what is States 33
That is the visit from February the 6th.
of 2019?
Yes.
And on the bottom of page 2, oh, I'm sorry, not the bottom.
Okay.
What does that indicate that you provided in the way of medication?
So that was the injection of promethazine as well as the oral tablets for promethazine.
So the defendant got an injection and that was administered at your office on the morning of the 6th of February, 2019, correct?
Correct.
But you sent her home with some tablets as well.
Yes.
Or are they tablets or capsules or can you tell?
The ones in the chart here says tablet, so
Tablets.
they can come in both.
Okay. Doctor, if it was a patient was allergic to the particular substance that you've been talking about, what would be the anticipated reaction?
It varies depending on the severity.
I'm gonna object. I believe he needs to be more specific as to what substance he's referring to.
Fair enough. Hand you what's been marked as states 33 and call your attention again to the medication that day. Let's talk about the injection. That would have taken place in your office, correct?
Correct.
Now, the tablets that you sent out,
Yes.
that's if an individual patient was allergic to that particular substance, what would you anticipate the reaction to be?
Again, depending on the severity, it can be as simple as upset stomach, rash, just feeling ill.
I'm objecting. And again, I believe we need to approach the bench.
Okay.
No. Don't keep approaching the bench now. The bench now that the state is making his case. I guess, hey, at this point in time, Livman said, at right about now, but she was on the actual jury, she would sit straight up. Heck yeah, because even though this is a defense witness, the state finally got a defense witness that's more so making a case. Okay? That's been happening vice versa all through this trial. This is the first time I have seen, whereas the defense witness is helping the state more. And maybe that last guy too, because he was so screwy.
All right, ask the question again, please, Mr. Truman.
We were discussing the likely reaction from a physician's point of view to an allergy to the particular medication you prescribed that day. And you couldn't be specific, but you were telling us in general terms what you might anticipate.
Yes, it could be anything from just nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, things like that, all the way up to potentially anaphylaxis.
What's that?
So that is when essentially your throat starts to close, can't breathe, and can potentially be fatal if not treated.
In between those two extremes, would passing out be a possibility?
Unlikely to be a allergic reaction side effect there.
Okay. Move for states 33 into evidence, please.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, states 33 will be admitted into evidence.
Could I have just a moment, please?
Indeed.
All these moments eating up the taxpayers' time.
Let's go back to the defendant and your treatment of her. Review of her chart indicates you prescribed Xanax for her.
Yes,
What is that?
that is an anti-anxiety medication,
And part of the family known as what?
benzodiazepine.
And in fact, you had a prescription for just a few days before that for her, correct? For that?
If you say so.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't keep all your patient stuff in your head?
Not that far back.
If those records do reflect that she filled a prescription a very few days, early days of February 2019, you'd have no reason to doubt that.
I would not have reason to doubt that.
I think that's it. Doctor, thank you. The state has no additional questions. Dr. Halsey.
All right, redirect Mr. Selden.
Can I take just a moment?
One additional question while
Go
we're
ahead.
thinking about it.
All right, so they getting ready.
On February 6th of 2019, did you prescribe any medication for Michael Cochran, or was it just the defendant?
Just Miss Cochran. I did not see Michael as a patient that day.
Thank you.
All right, let's go state cross-examination, huh? It should be what's going to happen, right? I think so. He said so much damage and stuff for the defense. I couldn't remember who witness it was.
So I guess from the cross-examination, you're familiar with Natalie Cochran's medical history.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Were you aware that Natalie Cochran had a history of heart problems and that she had heart surgery in September 2018 at CAMC?
I'm aware that's in the records, yes.
And her records reveal that she had a problem with the electrical impulses in her heart, that her heart beat too rapidly, and that was what caused her to have heart surgery. Is that correct?
I believe that to be correct.
Were you aware that Natalie Cochran, oh, and let me ask you, when someone has heart surgery or they're going to undergo surgery, they do a vast number of laboratory tests prior to the surgery and even after surgery.
In general, yes.
Were you aware, or does it appear in Natalie Cochran's records, that CAMC had done lab tests in connection with the surgery that revealed that Natalie Cochran's white blood cell count was low? Do you have any knowledge of that, or does it appear in the records?
I don't have knowledge of that since that was prior to establishing with me. So I can't answer that.
So would you have any knowledge that as a result of those lab tests, Natalie Cochran was instructed to undergo further laboratory tests?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay. Now, since the door's been opened and I feel the need, I have to go into it. I want to address Natalie Cochran's possibly having cancer, okay?
Okay.
Did Natalie Cochran make an appointment with you or your office at Access Health on January 15th of 2019, approximately a month before Michael Cochran's death?
Yes.
Did she make that appointment because she had some suspicions as to whether she may or may not have cancer?
My understanding was that she was told that she did have cancer and that we were trying to proceed with that.
And you don't know specifically who or what entity told
Correct.
her that, right?
Correct.
Okay. In her appointment, did she tell you she had made an appointment with the Cleveland Clinic to discuss the possibility of her having cancer, and specifically leukemia, which is a low white blood cell count?
Yes, at the time we were advised about an appointment with Cleveland.
Okay. Did she formally ask you to refer her there, or did she just give an indication she'd already made an appointment?
Just an indication.
Did you discuss her symptoms and why she suspected she might have cancer?
We had talked about various symptoms at the time. Yes.
Mhm. And in those discussions, she told you that she was always sick, always tired. She had cough and congestion that went on for a long time. She had body aches and diarrhea and symptoms similar to that.
Yes.
Now, did she call your office the next day, January 16th of 2019? Did she call or make contact with your office?
I believe that was the case. Yes.
Okay. And in that discussion, Natalie said that she had to cancel her appointment with the Cleveland Clinic because of insurance problems and coverage and things of that nature. Is that correct?
Yes.
So subsequently, because she didn't actually was seen at the Cleveland Clinic, you don't have any records from the Cleveland Clinic, correct?
Correct.
Did Natalie ask for and did you give her a referral to Duke University for possible further cancer diagnosis and or treatment?
Yes.
Do your records reflect or do you have any knowledge that Natalie Cochran was on a waiting list to actually confer with the oncology department at Duke University?
I would be unaware of that.
Were you aware that she and Michael Cochran drove down to Duke University to go through the emergency department because it was so long for her to get to the oncology department?
I do know that there was an ER appointment at that time.
Okay. Did you receive or get any records from Duke University?
Just from that ER appointment, and I think there may be some cardiology appointments in there too.
Okay. Now, because of Michael Cochran's subsequent death in February of 2019, the investigation into the fraudulent schemes and Natalie Cochran having problems from that, we don't know at this point whether or not Natalie Cochran indeed has cancer. Isn't that correct?
That's fair.
A moment, Your Honor.
Okay.
Now, isn't it also true that Natalie Cochran left your care in March of 2019, so you don't have any further knowledge of her care, treatment, etc.?
Correct.
A moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
All right, so I wonder if the state gonna redirect, because this would be a great time to redirect.
The prosecutor asks you about Michael Cochran's supposed allergies. And you don't know from your review of those records whether those were actual allergies or side effects of medications. Isn't that correct?
That's true.
Okay, let me.
I wouldn't have put the, I believe those were put in prior. So I don't know what the reaction that he may have had with those was.
Thank you very much.
Further questions, Mr. Truman?
Yes.
Go right ahead.
As Michael Cochran's primary care physician, you never treated him for diabetes, did you?
No.
Because he didn't have diabetes.
True.
You never prescribed insulin because he didn't need insulin.
True.
Back to the defendant for a moment. Any information that you have as her primary care physician was only what she told you in terms of cancer, correct?
Correct.
And you made efforts to refer her to Duke, correct?
Correct.
Ask this be marked as 34, please.
State's Exhibit 34, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Whoops. Dr. Haley, what's been marked for identification is states 34. Take a look at that, please.
Okay.
And in there, it addresses your attempt to refer to a specialist, which was Duke, for the defendant's alleged cancer.
Correct.
What'd they tell you, Duke?
That if she did not have a diagnosis of CLL, that they would not see her.
And did they come up with a diagnosis of CLL?
I never received any records from Duke.
Move states 34 into evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
It is admitted.
Doctor, thank you. State has no further questions.
Anything further, Mr. Selden?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ain't there so much on the table right there?
Possession of that state's number 34.
Okay.
This document purports to be information about Natalie Cochran's referral to Duke University. Was that correct?
Correct. That would be a phone note.
What is CLL?
It's a form of leukemia.
Which can be indicated by a low white blood cell count. Isn't that correct?
It can be, yes.
Now, this document clearly says that someone from Duke University called, and I don't know if they called you or Natalie.
It would have been-
It just says they called and stated they don't have records backing the diagnosis for CLL, and they won't see her, right?
Correct. That would have been between the referral nurse and my nurse at the time. The referral would.
And because Natalie Cochran was investigating whether she had CLL or any other form of cancer, she would not be able to provide those records. Isn't that true?
That would be true.
She didn't get an appointment at the Cleveland Clinic for the reasons discussed. Now Duke is saying, we need records that show you've already been diagnosed with CLL, or we can't take you, right?
That's correct. That's what the note says.
And you didn't have any of those records which definitively would diagnose Natalie Cochran as having CLL. right?
Correct. Correct.
Because she's investigating, right?
Correct.
She's trying to see these people.
On her own.
They're
without
telling
them.
her they can't see her in the oncology departments because they already need proof that she has CLL, right?
Yes. Yes.
Kind of a catch-22, isn't it?
That's medicine.
No further questions.
Anything, Mr. Truman?
Oh, unfortunately, I do. Doctor, the circular logic of that is this. She told you the month before that Duke is who diagnosed her with that, didn't she?
I believe it was from CAMC.
You
not
better.
Duke. Duke came later.
And you never got your records from CAMC either.
No.
Wouldn't a primary care physician be aware if his patient was being treated for cancer?
We would hope so. We don't, unfortunately, we don't always get records.
Don't always get records, but usually you would have something to indicate that your patient had cancer.
Generally, we would have those records.
Almost always, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Thank you, doctor.
Briefly.
Okay.
You don't have anything in your records that says CAMC said she had CLL, just that she might have it because of her lowered white blood cell count. Isn't that right?
The only thing in the chart that I would have for that was the notes to my nurse and myself at the time during that first office visit.
And once again, I'm sorry to belabor the point. She suspects she has CLL because of conversations with CAMC or some other hospital or entity. She wants to be referred for further diagnosis as to whether she has it or not, right?
So I think the very first visit, she had already had apparently an appointment with Cleveland. So that didn't involve us. And that she was telling the nurse at the time that she was informed that she had CLL. That's what the
What
note
nurse
says.
informed of
My
you?
nurse at the time.
You don't know if Natalie said, I'm pretty sure I have CLL and I want to be further diagnosed or treated, right?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact conversation. That was
Okay.
6 years ago.
did you or anyone from Access Health or any of these other entities, especially Duke, contact CAMC to get the lab results that indicated to Natalie Cochran she might have CLL?
I know that we would have, I can't speak for other entities, but I'm sure that we would have tried to get the documents from them.
But you didn't get them.
Correct.
Just a moment.
Okay.
It's amazing they don't hear how weak this argument is. And the doctors see and know this is bull.
I need to get states 34 again.
Very well.
I don't understand why, for the life of me, maybe it's some type of evidentiary rule or something. But I promise you, I would have said, would it seem strange without having a diagnosis, without being able to get what they talk about now? Would it seem strange that she would say or indicate that she needed insulin for her cancer treatment? That's what I would have said. Real smart like.
And I need just a moment, Your Honor.
All right.
Yeah, try to figure out what you're going to do. I don't even see how they could think that this witness was going to be a good witness for them. Did they really think that the state wasn't going to introduce the conversation
And
of
may I
cancer or
approach
not?
the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Let me be quiet.
I'm showing you what the market states, number 34. Now, right under here, at the bottom.
Okay. You're going to have to speak loudly, Mr.
Okay.
Sullivan.
Under here, under case description, and I'm going to read from this, okay? It says, Natalie was returning a call to the nurse, and that's the nurse at Access Health,
Yes.
right? Regarding lab results. Says, Natalie says, I tried to call the nurse around 12:20 p.m. There was no answer. And then the nurse says, in which I told the patient, and I don't know who I is, someone at Access Health, right?
Correct.
I would send a phone number to the nurse to return her call. The patient, that's Natalie, stated she is on her way back to her appointment with the cardiologist and then an appointment with the oncologist, and she wants her to be called at, and she leaves her phone number so she can try to get these records, right?
That's what the phone note says, yes.
Okay. And do you know if this is Natalie Cochran's phone number?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Last word, Mr. Truman.
The last word would be thank you to the doctor. He's been a good sport about all this. We're done.
Thank you very much, Dr. Halsey. You may step down. You are excused, sir. Call your next witness, Mr. Selden.
Yes, Ron. Before I call my next witness, I need to gather my notes.
Okay.
The defense calls Dr. Priya Banerjee.
If you'll raise your right hand, please, doctor. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may have a seat right there.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Selden.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Dr. Banerjee.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me? Thank you.
Tell us your name and how you spell it.
My name is Dr. Priya, Priya, and last name is Banerjee, Banerjee.
Where do you currently work and what's your title?
Sure. So, excuse me, I am self-employed at my company named Anchor Forensic Pathology, and I'm based in Barrington, Rhode Island, just outside of Providence.
Have you authored any publications or anything related to it?
Yes, I don't think I fully answered your last question. So I'm a forensic pathologist. And so I've worked in that field going on over 14 years. And so during my training, well, I mean, I'm talking about I was an attending and then there was training prior to that. So all in all, there were many occasions that I've done research myself and then published those articles, or then became a senior author, helped other individuals perform the projects, and we together presented them and published them.
And that's in your chosen field of forensic pathology, is that correct?
So I have publications throughout. I have cancer research articles. I have some basic pathology articles, as well as many publications in forensic pathology as well.
Okay. Do you have any teaching experience?
Yes, quite a bit. So in Rhode Island, let's see, I used to teach at the Roger Williams University, where I designed and taught a year-long forensic pathology and crime scene investigation course. That was 2 semesters. I did that for quite a while, and then I subsequently left that job due to personal reasons. I also taught at the Boston University Medical School, their graduate program in forensic sciences. Again, it was crime scene investigation and forensic pathology, and currently still hold since I think 2011 or 2012, a clinical assistant professorship at the Brown University Laboratory Medicine and Pathology program.
As a forensic pathologist, do you conduct autopsies and issue reports from that?
Yes, that's one of the many roles I do as a forensic pathologist. That's really what I'm trained to do. And as you've heard previously, that's one of the main tools we use as a forensic pathologist to make diagnoses.
What? Can you approximate at all how many autopsies you've done in the past?
That's a gross approximation, and I would say probably close to 3,000 now. So autopsy, my training stems back to my days at residency at the Johns Hopkins Hospital, where we learned and performed autopsies. I then went on to do a fellowship in forensic pathology, where I was, day in and day out performing autopsies. And then I was an assistant medical examiner for the state of Rhode Island for over 11 years. So again, very diligently doing autopsies. So all of those together, plus I've done some service work in various other offices that needed help, such as New Hampshire, Maine, Las Vegas. I've done that. And so this is just, I don't keep tallies, but I would say approximately, let's say 2,900 to 3,000.
Fair enough. Are you board certified in any of these areas that you're talking about?
Yes, so I after I completed my residency at the Johns Hopkins Hospital, I sat for my pathology boards, which was in the field of anatomic pathology. So that's like being in a hospital, looking at slides, whatnot. Autopsy is a part of that. So I was generally boarded in anatomic pathology. And then after I did my fellowship training, I was then eligible and on the first attempt passed my forensic pathology boards.
Do you have any medical licenses anywhere?
I currently hold 2 active licenses, one in the state of Rhode Island and one in Nevada. I also have a inactive good standing licensure in Pennsylvania.
At this time, I would like Dr. Banerjee certified as an expert in the field of forensic pathology.
Does the state wish to engage in voir dire?
Your Honor, the state accepts the witness's credentials.
All right, the court declares Dr. Banerjee to be an expert in the field of forensic pathology and anatomic pathology.
Permission to approach the clerk, Your Honor?
Yes.
And Your Honor, I am asking that this particular exhibit be marked as defense exhibit, whatever the next number is.
It's defense exhibit number 12.
Thank you.
Permission to approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Dr. Banerjee, I am handing you what's been marked as defense exhibit number 12. I'm going to ask you to refer to this document. I'm going to go back and ask you some questions, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Could you identify this document, what it is?
So this is my 7-page report that I submitted to you that summarizes all my, or contains all my conclusions related to this case.
Okay. You're starting to fade away a little bit.
Oh,
Please
sorry.
talk in the microphone. Thank you.
I'm very rarely accused of that.
On page 2 of that report, you specify what records you've received in preparation of that report. Would you please go through the records you received?
Yes, so I've itemized in my report in no particular order. All of them were submitted digitally. So just the first autopsy report for Michael Brandon Cochran, West Virginia, number 2019-3671. That is the first autopsy that Dr. Kubitschek performed. I also have medical records, 2 sets, one from Raleigh General and the other from Charleston Medical Center. I have an array of scene photographs of the candidate scene, including multiple pictures of a Humalog insulin list profile. I have Dr. Uribe's second autopsy report and Dr. Diane Krieger's expert report.
Now, you listened in to expert reports or expert testimony in this case, but that was subsequent to you authoring this report. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, I was allowed to by the judge with permission to also listen to Drs. Uribe and Krieger testify, but my opinion as written here is all formulated based on their written reports as well, and the summation of all this.
Okay. I'd like to skip down to the bottom of page 2.
Okay.
You have a heading marked discussion. Do you see that?
Yes.
I'd like to skip over paragraph 1 for now and go to paragraph 2. In that paragraph, you state that Mr. Cochran first underwent an autopsy by Dr. Kubitschek on September the 4th, 2019, which was 7 months after his death. Is that correct?
Yes, approximately 7 months.
Okay. Your Honor, I have another exhibit that I'm going to be questioning this witness about. Permission to approach the clerk.
Very well.
Defendant's exhibit number 13, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Now, I'd like to warn the jury ahead of time. These are photographs and they're somewhat gruesome. Dr. Banerjee, can you identify this exhibit?
Yes, so this is a hard copy printout of an array with 4 autopsy pictures with the same case number that I referenced, 19-3671, with Dr. Kubitschek's initials also on the placard in the photos. So these are at least 4 of the many autopsy photos that were submitted to me.
At this time, I'd like to move for admission of Dr. Banerjee's report and this exhibit.
Any objections, Mr. Truman?
No objection.
All right. Defense exhibits 12 and 13 will be admitted into evidence.
Now, you've already identified this photograph. I want to go back to your description under decomposition, page 3, paragraph 2.
Let's flip there. Yes.
Does this photograph accurately convey the advanced state of decomposition as photographed by Dr. Kubitschek in his autopsy?
Yeah, so this, unfortunately, embalming and burial does not keep the body in the same state as when one passes away. So even though the procedure is supposed to, it's still not perfect. And so you can see that 7 months later, Mr. Cochran's body was in a moderately decomposed state with moderate insect activity present. And those are words extracted from Dr. Kubitschek's autopsy. That's how he described it.
I'm going to remove the photograph.
All right.
On that same page, what was the description and the condition of Michael Cochran's heart on autopsy?
Yes, so the heart weighed 450 grams. And it wasn't described clearly as such, but assuming it was also moderately decomposed like the rest of him, it was, it follows that weight, as you've heard earlier, tissues and organs, as they fall apart with decomposition, they get lighter in weight. And so taking that into account, this is a relatively enlarged heart for someone his size and his stature.
Why is that significant, the enlarged heart?
So the heart is ironically one of those muscles that you don't really want to enlarge unless you're an Olympic athlete or very well conditioned. It often enlarges secondary to what we say stress. Now, stress can be anything like high blood pressure, anything that's sort of a continued stress on the body. It's not one episode. It's going to be longer term effects. So sometimes chronic substance abuse, exercise can help. But when we say it's a pathologically enlarged, abnormally enlarged, that's not a healthy heart.
You have a discussion about pseudoephedrine use.
Yes.
Please explain that.
Sure. So within the clinical records I was given, such certain substances that are considered controlled substances, which pseudoephedrine is one, is monitored, and the prescription sort of history is monitored. So that's how I knew he was on it. And pseudoephedrine is Sudafed, and we know that one of its side effects it's a stimulant, meaning that it will raise your blood pressure.
What about your statement about reported history of pseudoephedrine and stimulant use and the use of enclophamine use? How could these factors have affected Mr. Cochran?
Sure. So I assume that enclomiphene, wasn't a prescribed medicine. It was what the records say was illicitly obtained over the internet, and non-prescribed, I should say. And so all of these factors, when your heart is enlarged, it is a risk for sudden death, which is what we call an arrhythmia. The heart has an electrical system that helps us beat. Even as we sit here, we don't have to think about it. And when the heart gets thickened, abnormally so, the electrical system can basically short circuit, and then you miss a beat, you don't have a heart rate, you don't have a blood pressure, and you die. There really isn't any fingerprint of an arrhythmia. That's an electrical signal, right? So when you're alive, there are cardiologists that specialize in that, and they can, like an EKG is the electrical tracing of the heart. But once you are deceased, there's no way to really, there's no traceable rhythm. And so structurally, when we see an enlarged heart, we're worried about an arrhythmia as a possible cause of sudden death.
Could these factors in your discussion about a fatal arrhythmia or heart attack, could this have been a possible factor in Michael Cochran's death?
Yes, I just say arrhythmia, heart attack, I sort of classify differently, which I won't get into, but the abnormal rhythm would be an arrhythmia. And if it's a fatal, there's different tracings, which I'm not going to get into, but fatal arrhythmia can occur. And obviously with a decomposed heart, just like the rest of his body, that really limits making the diagnosis under the microscope. We can, again, just say that the heart was enlarged based on its weight.
So from that explanation, a fatal arrhythmia would not show up in autopsy, correct?
Correct. We have a structurally abnormal heart, which we know is at risk, but a fatal arrhythmia leaves no identifiable sign at autopsy, especially in a decomposed specimen.
What findings were made regarding the possibility of pancreatic tumors in Michael Cochran's body?
I know there's been some discussion about this, but upon review of the first autopsy report, again, the pancreas is one of the first organs to decompose in the body. It's full of enzymes, and as soon as we die, they start leaking, and that's what causes the pancreas to basically disintegrate. And so I think it's difficult, and I think it's improper to say that a pancreatic tumor was excluded, because 7 months later, the pancreas isn't going to be very recognizable. Even if it is, it's not going to be intact anymore to really see any types of tumors. These tumors, such as an insulinoma, can be less than 1 centimeter big. It can be millimeters, but it can still have a functional effect, which I find fascinating. But again, that's not going to be identifiable on a decomposed pancreas or organ.
Okay, and I may have missed it in your explanation. I just want to clarify. Can pancreatic tumors cause hypoglycemia?
Oh, yes. Sorry if I wasn't clear on that. Yes. So that's in one of the potential causes of hypoglycemia is a pancreatic tumor if it creates insulin. So tumors don't act like normal organs. And so if it's a tumor of the cells that make insulin in the body, and there's an sort of bad acting collection of them, then they form this tumor, and then they can pump out insulin that could cause low blood sugar hypoglycemia. There was no such, I think the capabilities of identifying such is very limited in a decomposed body.
Dr. Uribe stated that pancreatic tumors on autopsy were excluded in the first autopsy. Is that a correct statement?
I think not identified versus excluded are two different issues here. Not identified is true because the pancreas and other organs, again, are decomposed. Excluded is inaccurate because, again, that decomposition means it's 7 months later and it could have been there. We just can't see it based on the condition of the organ and the body in general.
I'd like to call your attention to the paragraph that's numbered number 3 on that page. Okay?
Yes.
You discuss post-mortem, meaning after death, toxicology tests performed. What's toxicology?
So toxicology is the basic testing of blood and other body fluids or tissues to see to try to detect, identify, and quantify any medications or substances that's in someone's body at the time of death.
Would you please discuss what tests were done or weren't done in connection with Michael Cochran's body? And along those lines.
So again, this is 7 months later.
I have a specific question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought
That's
you
all right.
wanted me to answer.
There's a discussion that there was no testing prior to Michael's death of, first of all, insulin. What's the significance of that?
So when he was alive then, you're
Yes.
saying? Okay. Because we talked about postmortem testing too.
No,
So
I'm talking about prior to Michael Cochran's death.
sure. So my review of the hospital record showed that there was, although low blood sugars were noted, there was no associated laboratory testing related to insulin, C-peptide, proinsulin levels, or any other medications like oral anti-glycemic agents, which are what you take to lower blood sugars, done in the hospital.
So those various tests that you're talking about, tests for insulin, tests for C-peptides, anabolic steroids, those all could have been done prior to Michael Cochran's death, correct?
Yes.
But they weren't done, right?
Per the medical records, they were not done.
and according to hospital records, etc., one of the reasons those tests weren't done was because when Michael Cochran was admitted to the hospital or hospitals, there was no suspicion of insulin being introduced into his body. And I'm talking about what they call exogenous insulin, insulin that's not produced by the body. Would that be a correct statement?
Yes, I saw no notation or differential diagnosis listed that. Oh, sorry. I did not see any notation or differential diagnosis listed within the medical records for that diagnosis, like exogenous insulin having a role in his hypoglycemia.
Okay. Is there any explanation for Mr. Cochran's urine screen, which was positive for benzodiazepines?
So this was a perplexing result to me. I think there was some confusion. Dr. Uribe said that, and there was midazolam detected in the postmortem toxicology. Midazolam is a benzodiazepine that can be used as a sedative or anesthetic, but that was given later in the hospital, and the urine screening was done very close to his admission to the hospital. It was done at 21:05, which is 9:05 p.m. The day of February 6th. And so he had not been given, there's no records within the nursing records or the doctor's orders that he was given any such medication in this class yet. So that means in the urine drug screen, there's an unexplained benzodiazepine positivity. Now, that just means I don't know what it is. I don't know where it came from, but it's a suggestion that he's on this something, at least one, if not more, benzodiazepine medications. And that's from the urine testing.
Okay. Let's go down to paragraph 4 on that same page.
Yes.
In that paragraph, you discuss the second autopsy, which was done by Dr. Uribe 4 years after Michael Cochran's death.
Yes.
What's the significance of an autopsy being done 4 years after death?
Well, I think in this, speaking specifically with this case, unfortunately, again, the embalming is not perfect, as we saw 7 months. So although there's no photographs, there was a description written by Dr. Uribe that the body was nearly skeletonized. There was some residual tissue, but mainly bones. And so obviously that decomposition has continued. Mr. Cochran's body was, buried again and then had to be re-exhumed. So again, his body's undergoing decomposition to almost no tissues remaining. And the ones that he had described that were there with the body were all very disintegrated in a medical bag and a plastic bag. So you can't really make any further conclusions from them. They're not intact anymore to make anything meaningful.
Because of the advanced state of decomposition, which has continued, does it make it harder to reach a conclusion in an autopsy?
So we have 2 autopsies here with 2 varying stages of decomposition, one obviously far more advanced than the other. But anytime we have decomposition, you really are working with not as perfect a body as it had been when he first died. So obviously, when I get asked the question, when do I need to autopsy my loved one? Usually I say within a week to really get meaningful results. And as time goes on, even with embalming, as you've seen, there's decomposition because the way our tissues react, they're just going to start disintegrating. They're no longer they're not healthy living tissues anymore because the person's not living. And so you're automatically handicapped to make some diagnoses. It's still very worthwhile doing a decomposition or decomposed autopsy. You want to make sure there's no trauma, there's no big, you can see some diagnoses, even natural diagnoses, you can see trauma, even some toxicology can be done, but it's still a hindrance at, due to the decomposition being there. And actually, in decomposition autopsies, there's an extensive explanation that I, sort of qualify the description of the organs, as well as the toxicology lab has to be, notified that, hey, this is not an ideal specimen. This is a decomposed specimen. And sometimes you even can't send as good a specimen to do the testing because it's not available anymore.
Now, if you can answer this question, fine. If you can't, that's fine too. In general, if an autopsy is done 7 months after death, and an autopsy is done 4 years after death, would the results in the first autopsy be more easily quantified or valid, let's say, than the second autopsy?
I think that's a very broad question.
Okay.
I can speak that, again, it's still worth examining a body at any time. I really look at it when, even with decomposition present, you want to make sure there's no identifiable trauma. So even some, in skeletonized remains, I've done many of those. You look at the bones to make sure there's no fractures, tool marks, gunshot wounds, anything like that. Do the bones tell you about the patient? Sometimes you can have surgery remnants, right? You can have hardware, you can have skull fractures, whatever it may be. We x-ray them, we look at them. That can be very meaningful. You can do DNA on bone, etc. But as the organs and soft tissues decompose, more information is leaving, right? So as time goes on, less and less information is available to make, I guess, like toxicologic analyses, even looking under the microscope, even at 7 months. You can see with moderate decomposition, it's not a worthwhile exercise.
I believe that Dr. Kubicek took some tissue samples, or was it Dr. Uribe, for toxicology analysis? Do you remember?
Yes, so Dr. Kubicek did. Yes. So there was at least clotted blood and maybe some tissue samples that he sent. I don't have the report in front of me, but I know that was the analysis that resulted in the midazolam, that one therapeutic, meaning medically given, prescribed medicine in his blood detected.
But generally speaking, those slides were pretty much useless. And I believe Dr. Uribe said he couldn't make any definitive findings as to those slides. Is that correct?
Sorry, just to clarify, I was speaking about the toxicology.
Okay. I'm talking about the slides.
I see. Maybe I misspoke or misunderstood. Excuse me. When you talk about slides are where we look under the microscope. So the way it works is you have to have a light and you have to have the glass slide that has a very thin, even thinner than paper layer of tissue on there. So that tissue means it's a section cut from the organ you want to look at. So heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, whatever it may be. And it's specially prepared in a lab, and it has at baseline usually pinks and purples to help me with my trained eye, or my colleagues like Dr. Kubicek or Dr. Uribe look under the microscope and make an interpretation. But that also, again, depends on the integrity of the tissues. So as the tissues fall apart, the detail under the microscope is no longer available. So I don't recall exactly what Dr. Kubitschek's conclusions were, if he took slides, but I know Dr. Uribe basically didn't submit them because no meaningful diagnosis could be made. The tissue was in such unrecognizable, decomposed state that it's not worth
Okay.
anybody's time, effort,
So
or money
for
to do it.
analytic purposes, those tissue slides were pretty much useless. Is that correct?
I'm not even sure he made slides. I thought he just retained them in little plastic containers in case he needed to, but I don't think he even made the slides. His comment was that it was something like no meaningful diagnoses could be made from them.
Pretty much useless, right?
Yes.
At paragraph 5 of your report, you discuss the documenting of Mr. Cochran's pseudoephedrine prescription, and then you discuss benzodiazepines, which were positive in his urine. How are these two substances related, and what's the significance of them?
Okay, so there are two medications that are controlled, meaning they have medical uses, but they're also regulated because they can be abused. So that's why each state usually has a prescription drug monitoring program. And as a part of the investigation and medical records, I received the printout for Mr. Cochran. That printout has a log that he was on pseudoephedrine for many months. However, benzodiazepine is a controlled substance, meaning like it's a medication, has plenty of medical uses, but also has potential for abuse. And there was no tracked benzodiazepine on anywhere. Actually, I didn't have it in his list of medical medications at home, and I did not have it on the state prescription drug monitoring program. So I'm sorry, just to conclude
From your discussion and report,
Mhm.
could Mr. Cochran, prior to death,
Mhm.
have overdosed on benzodiazepines?
So yes, that's where I was leading, that, a urine toxicology, when someone shows up at a hospital with altered mental state, meaning they're not talkative, they're confused, or they're not responding, that's why it aids doctors and clinicians that maybe we can find out what's in him because he can't tell us, and maybe that'll help us undo the effects of it, and if it'll allow him to wake up. Does that make sense? And so that is one. Overdose is a possibility. I have no idea which benzodiazepine this is. I don't know how much it is. It could be one, it could be more than one. I have no idea. I just know that that was a very strange result, given that he's not prescribed this at home. And then again, it's a drug of abuse, meaning if you're not prescribed it and you're using it, that is misuse of a prescribed medicine, or unprescribed medicine for that matter. I know you can get it off the internet. I've had other cases related to benzodiazepine overdose that could be illicit, if you will. So I think that's a strong differential,
Okay.
given.
Let me interrupt you right
Okay.
here and clarify. Did you state in your report that benzodiazepine overdose is a common cause of death alone
Mhm.
or in combination with other substances?
Yes, at least where I've practiced, benzodiazepines are often misused, abused, if you will, and if taken in excess can cause overdose, as I said, alone, or it's often used with many other substances that may or may not show up on a urine drug screen.
Okay. Did Mr. Cochran, prior to death and according to the medical records, exhibit any symptoms of benzodiazepine overdose?
I mean, any overdose, the way it affects your body, and a benzodiazepine.
I'm asking specifically, Mr. Cochran,
Mhm.
in your review of the medical records,
Yes.
did he exhibit symptoms of benzodiazepine overdose? And what symptoms are indicative or indicate possibly
Sure.
benzodiazepine overdose?
Sure. So they're non-specific, but respiratory arrest where he stops breathing. He can aspirate gastric contents into his lungs, like meaning vomit will come up and he'll breathe it in. Confusion, collapse, all of that is possible as the excess medication use and abuse causing overdose.
Can it cause seizures?
Not usually.
Okay.
I think, just to clarify, I think if he's in a prolonged state due to an overdose where his brain is deficient of oxygen, that could have seizure-like activity because the brain is injured. But the medication in and of itself does not cause seizures. It can sometimes be given for seizures.
Is hypoglycemia related to benzodiazepine overdose?
I think it could be. I don't know that it's directly related, but I think once the body starts getting in dysfunction and disarray, you can see hypoglycemia.
Okay. So it might have been a possible cause of Michael Cochran's hypoglycemia. Is that possible?
Benzodiazepine overdoses in the differential.
Is that a yes?
Yes. Sorry.
Let's take our afternoon break right now. Members of the jury will break for 10 or 15 minutes. Please do not discuss the case among yourselves or with anyone else. You may follow the bailiff to your jury room. Doctor, it would be improper for you to talk to Mr. Selden or anyone else about proposed lines of testimony or cross.
Okay, so they're on another break, and we're going to take a break, you guys. Okay, we've been here almost 4 hours. We did really good. What time is it? It's 1 something. So I'm gonna let them get to their break. I think I'm gonna end this live. And I'm thinking we'll just meet back here tomorrow morning. Okay, we'll meet back here tomorrow morning, same time, 10 o'clock. And that way we have a lot of stuff that we can fast forward through from today. As far as my overview of today, I don't know what to think about these medical experts. BA say speculation. I feel like, and it's so weird to feel like the medical experts leave me with nothing but a feeling of speculation. You know, just speculation. Now this last doctor, I feel like the only thing that she may have brought to the table is that, you know, she gave more reasonable doubt about the insulin, you know, by saying the benzos, this. It's all laying out the groundwork or firming up the groundwork by the defense saying, hey, this guy took a whole bunch of different pills and stuff. It's no telling what he took. He could have had an overdose, you know, that type of deal. And that leaves room for the reasonable doubt theory, right? Girl, it is a mess. It is a mess. Now, even though we're coming back tomorrow morning on this trial to pick back up, because we did almost 4 hours today, so that's really good. But I'm gonna be keeping my eye open, y'all. If y'all see me come back on with this thumbnail for this trial today, that means that the defendant testifying, okay? Which will be in a title. So I'm gonna be keeping my eye out and peeled. If she hit the stand, I will be back on this today. Okay. If not, we'll reconvene tomorrow on the Ponzi scheme wipe trial. And I can assure you guys, I got a lot of my stuff done, everything. I've been in a break in between. We will be coming back tonight for the best of the burn pile so we can get through the family members and the lovers' testimony. That's a guarantee. I will be here tonight, okay? All right. Thank you guys for supporting this content and hanging through there. Today was tedious, but it bees that way sometime. I'll see you guys later. Hey, Miss Step 219, it is a hot mess. It's just like, oh my God. See y'all tonight for the best stuff burn pile trial. Bye. Hit the like.
Thanks for watching. Do not forget click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Like, comment and share. See you next time.